Human history is a long, winding road. It is filled with incredible moments of invention, cooperation, and progress. We built pyramids. We walked on the moon. We connected the entire globe with an invisible web of information. Yet, this same road is also scarred by deep, repeating ruts of conflict and chaos. Historians often call these periods ages of discord. These are not simply times of war between nations. They are times when societies turn inward and begin to tear themselves apart. Neighbors stop trusting neighbors. Shared stories that once held millions together suddenly crumble into dust, replaced by suspicion and hatred. It is a recurring fever that seems to afflict civilizations, no matter their technological prowess or philosophical advancements. Why does this pattern repeat? It is not because humans are inherently evil or foolish. Rather, it is because the very things that allow us to build great societies also contain the seeds of their destruction. Our ability to cooperate in massive numbers depends on shared myths, stories we all agree to believe, like the value of money, the authority of laws, or the sanctity of a nation. But these stories are fragile. When people lose faith in them, the social order can collapse with breathtaking speed. An age of discord begins when the common narrative breaks down, and competing, hostile stories rush in to fill the void, pitting group against group in a struggle for dominance. Think of a society as a grand theater. For centuries, everyone might have been watching the same play, understanding their roles and the plot. But in an age of discord, the lights flicker, the stage breaks, and different groups of actors start performing entirely different plays, all at once and on top of each other. One group performs a tragedy of past grievances, another a comedy of revolutionary zeal, and a third a drama of divine command. The audience becomes confused, then angry. They pick sides, shouting for their preferred play to continue and for the others to be silenced. This is the essence of social breakdown, the loss of a shared script for reality. These periods are marked by intense polarization, where the world is painted in stark black and white. Nuance disappears. Compromise becomes a dirty word, seen as a betrayal of one's own side. People who were once seen as fellow citizens are rebranded as existential threats. The conflict is no longer about a specific policy or a piece of land. It becomes about identity itself. Who are we? Who belongs? Who is the enemy? These questions, once settled by a common story, are thrown wide open. The answers that emerge are often simple, brutal, and drenched in the language of fear and division, setting the stage for decades of strife. The tendency toward discord is not just a flaw in our societies, it is deeply embedded in our own minds. For hundreds of thousands of years, Homo sapiens evolved in small, tight-knit tribes of hunter-gatherers. In that environment, survival depended on a powerful instinct. Trust your own group implicitly and be wary of strangers. This us versus them mechanism was a life-saving feature. It allowed our ancestors to cooperate effectively with their kin to find food, raise children, and defend against predators or rival tribes. This ancient software is still running in our 21st century brains, even though we now live in global cities of millions. This psychological programming makes us vulnerable to division. Our brains are hardwired to seek patterns and take shortcuts. It is far easier to categorize people into simple in-groups and out-groups than to grapple with the complex reality of each individual. We instinctively feel more empathy for those we perceive as us and can easily dehumanize those labeled them. This is not a conscious choice. It is an automatic, emotional reaction. When we hear a story that confirms our biases about another group, it feels good. It feels right. Our brains reward us with a little hit of dopamine, reinforcing the belief and making us even more resistant to information that contradicts it. This tribal instinct is the fertile soil in which leaders who wish to divide and conquer plant their seeds. They do not need to invent hatred from scratch. They simply need to activate the pre-existing circuits in our brains. They do this by media group, people emphasizing differences in debate, news headlines about manufactured threats a stock distribute equally, highlighting differences, fabricating threats, and telling compelling stories where our group is the hero and another group is the villain. Once this switch is flipped, our ability for critical thinking often takes a back seat to our powerful emotional need to belong and to defend our tribe. We start filtering all information through the lens of our group identity, accepting anything that supports our side and rejecting anything that challenges it, regardless of the facts. This is why facts alone are often not enough to change someone's mind during a period of intense social conflict. Presenting a person with data that contradicts a deeply held belief connected to their identity can feel like a personal attack. Their brain's threat detection system kicks in, and they double down on their original belief to protect their sense of self and their place in the tribe. We see this in debates about everything from politics to public health. The conflict is not happening on the level of rational argument. It is happening on the primal, emotional level of identity and belonging. Overcoming discord means understanding and addressing this deep-seated human psychology. Humans think in stories. We are not creatures of data and spreadsheets. We are creatures of narrative. A good story can unite millions of strangers and inspire them to build cathedrals, fight wars, or establish nations. Whoever controls the stories, therefore controls the world. Throughout history, elites, be they kings, priests, or politicians, have understood this fundamental truth. Their power has rarely rested on physical force alone. It has rested on their ability to craft and disseminate a convincing narrative that legitimizes their rule and gives meaning to the lives of the masses. A king was not just a man with a shiny hat. He was God's chosen representative on earth. This was not a fact. It was a powerful story. Consider the great empires of the past. The Roman Empire did not hold its vast territories together for centuries just with legions. It did so with the story of Roman civilization, law, and order, the Pax Romana. This narrative promised peace and prosperity to those who accepted Roman rule. Similarly, religious leaders have wielded immense power by controlling the ultimate story, the story of life, death, and the cosmos. By providing answers to humanity's deepest questions and offering a code of conduct, they shaped the behavior of billions. Those who challenged the official story were not just dissenters. They were heretics, a danger to the very fabric of reality as defined by the elite. Information control was the key mechanism for maintaining the dominance of these official stories. In an age before printing presses and the internet, information was a scarce and precious commodity. Scribes in ancient Egypt, monks in medieval monasteries, and scholars in imperial China were the gatekeepers of knowledge. They decided which texts to copy, which histories to record, and which ideas to preserve. This gave rulers and religious institutions a near-total monopoly on the narrative. They could erase inconvenient facts, invent glorious pasts, and define who was a hero and who was a traitor. The story people heard was the story the powerful wanted them to hear. This control of the narrative is crucial for mobilizing a population. To launch a crusade, you need a story about holy lands being desecrated by infidels. To start a revolution, you need a story about an oppressed people rising up against a tyrannical regime. These stories are the fuel for collective action. Elites who wish to maintain power work to reinforce the existing story, while those who wish to seize power must introduce a new, more compelling one. Ages of discord are often battles between competing storytellers, each vying for the hearts and minds of the population, with the fate of society hanging in the balance. The fundamental tools of division have not changed. Fear, tribalism, and storytelling are as potent today as they were in the age of Julius Caesar. What has changed dramatically is the delivery system. The invention of the internet and the rise of social media have created a digital megaphone of unprecedented power and reach. The old tricks of information control and narrative manipulation are now turbocharged. A rumor that might have taken weeks to spread by word of mouth can now circle the globe in minutes. A story crafted to provoke outrage can reach millions of people before anyone has a chance to check if it is true. In the past, elites maintained a top-down control of information. There were a few major sources, a handful of newspapers, a few television channels, that acted as gatekeepers. While they could be biased, they also had an incentive to maintain a degree of credibility. Today, that model has been shattered. Anyone with a smartphone can be a publisher. This has democratized the flow of information, but it has also created a chaotic digital wilderness. In this wilderness, the most extreme, emotional, and outrageous content often travels the fastest and furthest. Algorithms designed to maximize engagement learn that fear and anger are powerful tools for keeping users glued to their screens. This new ecosystem is a paradise for modern manipulators. Foreign states, domestic political factions, and even individuals seeking profit can now easily inject disinformation and propaganda directly into the social bloodstream. They can create thousands of fake accounts to simulate a massive grassroots movement. They can use micro-targeting to send specific, divisive messages to narrow demographic groups, telling one group that their jobs are being stolen and another that their culture is under attack. They create echo chambers, digital spaces where people only hear opinions that reinforce their own, making them more extreme and less tolerant of different views. The result is a constant, low-grade fever of discord. We are perpetually bombarded with content designed to make us angry at them. This digital environment degrades our ability to trust institutions, the media, and even each other. When we cannot agree on a basic set of facts, it becomes impossible to have a rational public debate about solving real-world problems like climate change or economic inequality. Instead, we retreat into our digital tribes, armed with our own sets of alternative facts, seeing those on the other side not as fellow citizens with different opinions, but as delusional or malevolent enemies. The digital megaphone is amplifying our worst instincts at a global scale. In this new age of information warfare, our most important shield is our own mind. We can no longer passively consume information and trust that it has been vetted for us. We must become active, critical thinkers. This means developing what some call defensive cognition, the practice of thinking about our own thinking. It is, honestly, the mental equivalent of washing our hands before we eat. Before we swallow a piece of information, especially one that provokes a strong emotional reaction, we must pause and inspect it. Where did it come from? Who benefits from me believing this? Does it use loaded, emotional language designed to bypass my rational brain? The first step in building this mental armor is recognizing our own vulnerabilities. We must accept that our brains are wired with biases. We are all susceptible to confirmation bias, the tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs. We must be aware of our emotional triggers. If a headline makes you feel a surge of anger or fear, that is a signal to be extra cautious, not to immediately click share. This self-awareness is not about being cynical. It is about being a responsible citizen in the digital age. It requires a dose of humility, the admission that we can be fooled and that our first instincts are not always our best guides. Next, we must cultivate the habit of fact-checking. This does not mean we need to become professional investigative journalists. It can be as simple as taking 30 seconds to search for the same story from a few different, reputable sources before accepting it as true. It means learning to spot the signs of a fake news article, such as a sensationalist headline, a lack of named sources, or an unusual URL. These are simple digital literacy skills that should be taught in every school, as fundamental as reading and writing. They are the basic tools for navigating the modern information landscape without getting lost in the fog of disinformation. Finally, defensive cognition is not just an individual practice. It can be a collective one. We can help our friends and family by gently questioning a dubious story they share, not by attacking them, but by modeling critical thinking. For example, one could ask, "That's an interesting point. Where did you read that? I'd like to look into it more." This creates a culture of healthy skepticism and mutual support. By working together to verify information and hold each other accountable, we can strengthen our collective immunity to manipulation. We can transform our social networks from channels of contagion into networks of collaborative truth-seeking, building a community-wide defense against the forces of discord. While history is full of societies that collapsed into discord, it also offers powerful examples of those that pulled back from the brink. These survivors provide a crucial blueprint for how to build resilient, stable communities. One of the most important lessons is the power of fair and inclusive institutions. After centuries of brutal religious wars in Europe, the Peace of Westphalia in 1648 established the principle of state sovereignty. More importantly, it laid the groundwork for societies where laws, not religious dogma, would govern public life. This created a neutral space where people of different faiths could coexist and cooperate, reducing the power of religious elites to incite conflict. Another key factor is the creation of a shared identity that transcends tribal loyalties. In the 19th century, nations like Italy and Germany were patchworks of small competing states, duchies, and kingdoms. Unifying them required more than just military conquest. It required the construction of a new national story. This was achieved through national education systems that taught a common language, a standardized history, and shared cultural symbols. Children who once might have seen themselves as merely Bavarian or Sicilian began to see themselves as German or Italian. This larger identity did not erase local differences, but it created an overarching sense of belonging that could override smaller conflicts. The United States, after its devastating Civil War, provides another complex but instructive example. The path to reconciliation was long and deeply flawed, especially concerning racial justice. However, the survival of the Republic depended on rebuilding institutions and, eventually, re-establishing a shared American narrative. The emphasis on the Constitution as a foundational document, the expansion of public education, and the creation of national infrastructure like the Transcontinental Railroad all worked to bind the fractured country back together. It demonstrated that even after a catastrophic internal conflict, it is possible to reconstruct a society if there is a commitment to shared rules and a common future. These historical cases show that escaping discord is not about finding a perfect ideology or a magical leader. It is about the slow, difficult work of building robust structures. It requires creating laws that are seen as legitimate and fair by the vast majority of the population. It involves investing in education that fosters a sense of shared citizenship and critical thinking. And it depends on crafting compelling, inclusive stories that allow people to see themselves as part of the same collective enterprise, even if they disagree on many things. These are the pillars that can support a society through the inevitable storms of history. Even in our turbulent modern era, some societies have proven remarkably resistant to the virus of discord. These countries are not perfect, but they offer contemporary models for building social cohesion and trust. The Nordic countries, Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, are prime examples. They consistently rank among the happiest, most stable, and least corrupt nations on Earth. Their success is not due to some unique cultural magic. It is the result of decades of deliberate policy choices. They have invested heavily in high-quality, free public education, which equips citizens with the skills for critical thinking and fosters a shared civic understanding from a young age. These nations have also built strong social safety nets and work to reduce extreme economic inequality. When people feel secure in their basic needs, healthcare, education, and housing, They are less susceptible to the politics of fear and resentment. A wide social consensus supports a system where taxes are high, but the public services they fund are excellent and available to all. This creates a powerful sense of social solidarity and trust. People trust that the government is working for the common good, and they trust that their fellow citizens are also contributing their fair share. This high-trust environment is a powerful antidote to polarization. Japan offers a different but equally interesting model of social stability. While facing its own challenges, such as an aging population and economic stagnation, Japanese society maintains an extraordinary level of internal cohesion. This is partly rooted in a culture that emphasizes group harmony and social duty, but it is also reinforced by institutions. A national education curriculum ensures a shared base of knowledge and values. Furthermore, a strong sense of national identity, combined with relatively low immigration, has created a highly homogeneous society. While this homogeneity brings its own set of problems, it has undeniably helped insulate Japan from the kind of identity-based conflicts that have torn other nations apart. What these diverse examples have in common is a deep reservoir of social trust. This trust is not accidental, it is cultivated. It is trust in institutions, that the courts are fair, that the police are not corrupt, that elections are free. It is trust in the media, which in many of these countries is heavily regulated or publicly funded to ensure quality and impartiality. And it is trust in each other, a general belief that other citizens are playing by the same rules and share a basic commitment to the welfare of the society. This trust is the invisible architecture that holds a society together, making it a fortress against the forces of discord. So, how can we actively build and maintain this crucial social trust and break the cycle of discord? The task can seem daunting, but the blueprint consists of practical, achievable steps that can be taken at both the individual and societal levels. The foundation of this blueprint is education, but this cannot just be about teaching facts and figures. We must fundamentally reorient education towards cultivating critical thinking, digital literacy, and civic empathy. From an early age, students must learn how to question sources, identify bias, and understand the psychological tricks used in propaganda. They must also learn the history of their own country and others, not as a simple story of heroes and villains, but as a complex narrative of struggles and compromises. On a societal level, we must fight to protect and strengthen our shared, neutral institutions. This means ensuring the rule of law applies equally to everyone, regardless of wealth or power. It means safeguarding the independence of the judiciary, protecting the integrity of our electoral systems, and demanding professionalism and non-partisanship from our civil service. When people lose faith in these core institutions, they lose faith in the entire system, and the ground becomes fertile for demagogues. Supporting these institutions is not a partisan issue. It is a prerequisite for a functioning, stable democracy. We must treat them as the precious, fragile infrastructure they are. Individuals also have a critical role to play in their daily lives. We can make a conscious choice to break out of our echo chambers. This means deliberately seeking out news and opinions from sources outside our usual bubble. It means following people on social media with whom we disagree, not to argue with them, but to understand their perspective. It requires practicing the principle of charity in conversation, assuming the other person is speaking in good faith until proven otherwise. We can also choose to reward high-quality journalism by paying for it, and we can refuse to share sensationalist, unverified content, thereby stopping the spread of disinformation within our own networks. Finally, fostering face-to-face community engagement is a powerful antidote to digital alienation. Participating in local sports teams, book clubs, volunteer organizations, or neighborhood associations puts us in contact with people from different backgrounds in a cooperative setting. These real-world interactions build bridges of empathy and trust that are much stronger than fragile digital connections. They remind us that the people on the other side are not monstrous caricatures from a news feed. They are our neighbors, our colleagues, and our fellow citizens. Rebuilding society starts with rebuilding community, one local, human connection at a time. History is not a prophecy. The recurring cycles of discord are not an inescapable fate. They are the result of choices made by individuals and societies. The same human nature that makes us vulnerable to division also equips us with the capacity for reason, empathy, and remarkable cooperation. We are the only species on this planet that can analyze its own past, understand its own psychological weaknesses, and consciously decide to chart a different course for the future. The knowledge of how societies fall apart is also the knowledge of how they can be held together. The choice of which path to follow rests with us. Building a more resilient, unified society is not a utopian dream. It is a practical project of maintenance and construction, like building a great cathedral over generations. It requires patience, dedication, and a shared commitment to the work. It demands that we invest in our children's education, that we uphold the integrity of our common institutions, and that we practice the daily discipline of critical thinking and mutual respect. It means choosing the hard work of understanding over the easy satisfaction of outrage. It means believing in the possibility of a shared story, even when the noise of conflict seems deafening. The digital age presents us with both immense perils and immense opportunities. The same technologies that can be used to spread hatred and lies at lightning speed can also be used to foster global understanding, facilitate collaborative problem solving, and give a voice to the marginalized. The internet does not have its own will. It is a tool, and its impact will be determined by how we choose to wield it. We can allow it to amplify our most primitive tribal instincts, or we can harness it to enhance our collective intelligence and build a more informed, connected global community. Ultimately, the future is an unwritten story. We are all its authors. We can choose to write another chapter in the long, sad saga of human discord, retreating into our angry tribes and watching our world burn. Or we can choose to write a new story. A story of a species that, on the brink of unprecedented challenges, looked at its own reflection, understood its flaws, and chose to be better. A story of a generation that learned to master its tools and its instincts, that rebuilt trust where it had been broken, and that forged a shared future worthy of our immense potential. The pen is in our hands.